When Pip arrives in London, it's not quite as illustrious as he'd imagined, and in particular Barnard's Inn is a little bit grotty perhaps compared to the imaginings of a rural boy. In fact, Victorian London would have been smelly, it would have been very crowded, there's very little sanitation, so streets aren't very wide, they're narrow, and certainly in the later 19th century, a number of buildings were knocked down to widen streets, to make them the grand thoroughfares that we recognise today. In Victorian London, they're much more narrow. They're far more crowded. You have a great deal of traffic. What we tend not to think about when we think about Victorian London is the sheer number of animals on the streets, in backyards, and the stench of animal traffic. So it's a very noxious space, Victorian London. It's also, of course, very colourful. And one of the most common things that visitors to London remember is how low life live cheek by jowl with the upper classes. You can have a financial district which, and this is the centre not just of the nation, but increasingly of a vast empire. You can have a financial district which turns out gold. Just behind it will be some court where there are 20 people living in 2 or 3 rooms in absolute abject poverty. And that's the reality of Victorian London. And that's the reality that Dickens was keen to expose and to campaign against, to get some of that gold that flowed out of the financial districts and make sure that some of it went back into improving the lives of those who lived in the slums.